Sherrie, there's a lot said about becoming an attraction agent, but to become an attraction agent, that requires a lot of profile marketing.
Yes, no, I agree. And I think as much as everyone wants to be an attraction agent, the reality is that you actually need to get there first. So I think, you know, the first thing you need to do is actually just build up that, I guess, that profile by hard work and by creating, you know, raving mad fans. And then once you've got raving mad fans and they start to give you referrals and then it all starts to come together, and then you start to make money so that you can actually, you know, post on the internet and those sorts of things.
So is it like building blocks? You just start with one, you make the best thing, you do the best you can with that, then you build on it?
Yes, and I think people look at, you know, what they want to do in a year. I don't look at it that way. I'm actually very focused on 3 months, and I use each individual property, I guess, as you talk about, as a block to actually get to the next step, to get to the next step, to get to the next step. So it is very, very specific.
You work in an office that's got some pretty high-profile operators. In fact, some of the best high-profile operators in Brisbane or Queensland, maybe even Australia, who knows? But how do you stand out in that environment? Why would someone come to your office and list with you?
Yeah, you are right. I do work in a remarkable office. And if I may, that's probably one of the reasons why I want to work there, because I actually want to be in an environment where people want to be the best at their craft, and we all want to have that high-performance mentality. You know, I am truly blessed to work in that environment. But I suppose at the end of the day, you know, if I'm coming up against somebody else high profile in my office, quite often what we'll do, rather than fight each other for it, we'll actually just join forces and we'll go for it ourselves. So I think our office has a very different atmosphere to most other real estate agencies, where we're not actually fighting each other. We're actually do genuinely want the best for each other.
Sherrie, how important has social media been to you in building your profile?
Well, that's really been a foundation, I suppose, to my business. So I get at least a lead a day from Facebook. Now, some of them may not be my preferred leads, but the reality is that if I'm not able to work it, I might be able to refer it to somebody else in my office or another agency. So I think it is absolutely fantastic. Yeah,
and of course video's given us that opportunity to actually show a lot more personality in what we do. Do you use that in your communication?
Yeah, look, I do. I love video, and I do see the relevance, and I do very strongly believe in video. So as soon as I list a property, I literally do, you know, the 30-second, you know, hold my phone up or my iPad up. And it's really funny, people love those videos. The professional ones, you know, I always get a couple of likes, but I get lots of shares for these you know, 30-second videos that I do. And it's really funny, I literally stand up there, I do one take, and I'm back in the car and I'm kind of running off. But the amount of people that might call me up and say, oh, Sherrie, I don't know if you realise, but you said and there a few times, or, you know, so people are actually really watching.
Critiquing you.
Yeah, that's right. And I think that's kind of great. But, you know, I'll run into somebody in the street and they'll sort of say to me, you know, hi Sherrie, how you going? I'm like, great, I haven't seen you in ages. And they said, well, I feel like I see you all the time because I watch your videos. So I know that they're actually being used. One of the property that I sold earlier this year, the video was actually shared and I got an offer from somebody else's database, I suppose, on Facebook, which is powerful. You use video also for seller feedback, don't you? Yes, I do. So as soon as I finish an open home, I do send a video to my buyers, but I also do send one to sellers as well, because then I'm in the car, they're dying to find out what happened at the open home, and I don't necessarily have a moment to give them a call at that time. Sometimes, you know, I might need to call somebody hot back from an open home 1 or 2 before, but they know that I'm going to get back to them that day, but they've got an immediate response ready to go. Those videos you do for buyers who come to open homes, are they done for every individual buyer? Not every buyer, but obviously if somebody has come to a few of my open homes that day, they will actually be more specific, because it's clear that they're a qualified buyer who's ready to go now. And what do you say to them? I just generally thank them for their time and for coming through, and see if they have any further, you know, interest to give me a call, and letting them know when I'm going to be in contact furthermore. Have you got a script for that, or is that just done off the cuff? Well, we do it a lot, so I guess we've kind of become a little bit programmed, but no, it's done off the cuff. Hello and welcome once again to our auction update for this week. We'll have a look in a moment at the auction numbers for the weekend. They're down in Sydney and Melbourne. We'll come back with the full report, and Geoff White from CoreLogic will be with us back in just a moment.
The real estate business is tough, and rising costs are making it harder to thrive. Did you know you can save up to 70% on your staff costs by outsourcing the low-value, repeatable tasks, so your team can focus on growing your business? Beepo is an outsourcing provider focused on the real estate industry. With an English-speaking, tertiary qualified and fully trained team in the Philippines, Beepo will give your business the boost it needs to start growing and returning value to you. We can look after all of your low-value, repetitive administration work from our fully secure office. We provide comprehensive real estate-focused training and accreditation. The Beepo team is supervised by on-site management with finance industry standard security features. For more information, visit beepo.com.au.
Welcome back to the show, and welcome also to Geoff White from CoreLogic. G'day, Geoff. How are you doing?
G'day, Kevin.
Geoff, auction numbers for the weekend are down, but firstly, let's have a look back at last week's results. And these, bearing in mind, once again, we'll mention to you, these are the results for the full week, not just the weekend. Let's bring up the final numbers, Geoff. What do we see there?
Yeah, Kevin, we're seeing a weighted average this week, or the week just gone, of 51.4%, which is a very good percentage. It's certainly up on last week. It's the fourth time, Kevin, that the national weighted average has been above 50%. So that's a very good sign for this year, and we're starting to see a bit of a pattern. So just running through those capital cities there, Sydney finished with 54.2, a pretty handsome number, I think, given 638 auctions. Melbourne, 52.1, been fairly consistently around that number, 920 auctions. Brisbane, 37.6 off 104 auctions. Adelaide, again, the steady performer there. It's 53.3. I think
we wish.
73. Yeah, that's right. With 105 auctions. Perth, pretty much similar to what it has been, 26.3 off 28. Canberra dipped under 50, which was interesting because it was above 50 before. 49.3 but 74 auctions. So 51.4 for the weighted average there, Kevin.
Yeah, well, let's just keep our nose above that 50%.
Yep.
We don't want it to nudge any much lower than that, that's for sure. Mate, I thought it'd be good for us to have a look at the sub-regions. Firstly, we'll bring up Sydney and have a look at some of the areas there that stood out for you.
Yes, looking and scanning the sub-regions. Sydney's sub-regions range from as low as 20%, which was Blacktown, but only 10 auctions, so I'm not reading much into that, but right up to 66.7, which was the highest in Ryde, which we looked at that last week, and that's still holding up. Again, a reasonable number there, 32 auctions. But generally speaking, the ones that stood out for me here are certainly the eastern suburbs with 112 auctions and 55.6. So that's a very stable result and promising, and a very good, strong underlying result for the Sydney regions generally. The North Sydney Hornsby, of course, 100 auctions. That's always been up there, and very good at 63%. And the city and inner south with 65.6 at 69 auctions. So a generally good performance across the board in Sydney, and I think that's looking good for the future too, when you're still seeing those 50s and 60s in Sydney.
Yeah, indeed. Even Northern Beaches, looking at that too, that's almost 55% off 74 auctions. They're good numbers. That's
right, exactly. I think at this point in time, if you look at anything, over 50 or 60 auctions and above 50%, that's probably a good result. So yeah, Northern Beaches did very well, Kevin. Yeah, you're right.
It's important that those bigger markets that carry the number of auctions maintain those levels, well over 50%, even up to 60%, because that has a big impact on that weighted average.
That's right, exactly right. And I think we're seeing that. I think, with the likes of North Sydney, Hornsby, and right through to the eastern suburbs, they've been maintained pretty well. So good solid performance there for Sydney overall.
Now, Melbourne sub-regions, Geoff?
Yeah, Melbourne sub-regions, there's probably a few more that have dipped below 50 this week, but the overall for Melbourne is still up. The lowest in Melbourne was 41.6, so you can see that the lowest is not as low as Sydney, and that's the northwest region in Melbourne with 41.6. The highest being 66.7 in the inner east, so that's done very well. And it's very interesting, Kevin, that Inner East in Melbourne is identical to Ride in Sydney, and they both had 66.7, and so they're both equal, although the Inner East in Melbourne had 118 auctions. So a good range there, but solid performances from the Inner South with 141 auctions, even the Inner Melbourne with 193 auctions, higher volume, and still a whisker under 50% at 49.7. So pretty consistent in Melbourne, and that sort of held up the weighted average in Melbourne this week.
Mate, if we could just move to the auction numbers for this week, and we see both Sydney and Melbourne, as we said at the opening, down in both cases by around about 200 auctions.
Yes, that's right. And I think this is really an example of where we're starting to get into some normal pattern now. We tended to, be sort of waiting to see what the market was going to do, and I think it's starting to find its level this year. We've got to also remember that, vendors would be contemplating whether they auction or whether they go private sale at the moment. And I suspect that in some areas, the agents are probably suggesting private sale, hence the number of auctions are down. We can't compare this week to the same week last year, because the same week last year was the week before Easter, which is normally a bit more of a bumper week. But Sydney with 465, which is quite down on last week, and Melbourne with 754, which again was down as well. Brisbane's probably sitting about where it is, and Adelaide much the same as what it normally is, so 112 and 115 there. Perth 42, Canberra 60. So generally speaking, we've got 1,552 auctions so far we're tracking, which is down from 1,875 last week. So we're seeing a bit of a drop, yeah.
Yeah, so that is the pattern, which is what you're indicating there, Geoff. It'll be interesting as we get that run towards Easter too. You mentioned this time last year it was the weekend before Easter. So let's hope that we see an increase over the next couple of weeks anyway.
Yeah, that's right. And we may see a bit of a lift in that week before Easter as well. So that'll be a bit of a watching game. But certainly I think, we can't lose sight of where we were a few months ago. This time we're down a bit on numbers, but the volume's up. The clearance rates are up, which is promising, and that I think can give some confidence to the overall auction market across the country, really, that, auctions are alive and well, and there's plenty of people sticking their hands up at auctions and buying property, so that's good.
Well said, my friend. Geoff White from CoreLogic brings us these reports. We'll be back on Monday, of course, and we'll give you a total wrap on the full week and the most accurate week-long numbers in the market. To stay with us. And, of course, all of our shows on propertytv.io. A reminder for you, too, that Real Estate Talk comes out tomorrow, and also property news update today as well. Hey, Geoff, great talking to you, my friend. We'll talk to you on Monday.
Fantastic, Kevin. All the best.
Evening, Clara.
Home, please.
David, what's on your mind?
I was just thinking of a different time is all. It was a time when I used to sit up there, Driving wasn't just about being taken from place to place, but going somewhere. Feeling something along the way.
Please, David, you should relax.
I'm afraid that's just the problem.
David, where are you going? David? David?